Everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and tonight I just got back from watching the brand new movie, Bring Her Back, which is a horror movie from the same creators as Talk to Me, the one with the kids playing with the little ceramic hand, and then they touch the hand and they start seeing ghosts and stuff. Anyways, same creators, brand new A24 horror movie. So one thing you can be sure of, it's gonna be kind of messed up. And I will say that up front. You know, I saw a lot of reviews coming out earlier today about how, like, oh, this is a movie that's gonna stay with you and it's gonna, like, you know, like, it's just gonna kind of rock your world for a little while. And there is a lot of disturbing, not just imagery, but also just like ideas that get presented here, and you're like, oh yeah, this is really messed up, right? And my mind immediately started comparing it to Hereditary, right? Like, before I watched it, I was like, oh, this is gonna be sort of Hereditary vibes, where it's not necessarily jump scares everywhere, but it's some visuals and it's ideas and just uncomfortable, really like kind of cringy situations. You're like, oh god, this is horrible, I want this situation to stop, you know. And we do get a lot of that. I don't think it was an unfair comparison. I will say, I don't think that this is as strong or solid as Hereditary was, right? So, you know, but I feel like if you're wanting a similar vibe to a Hereditary, this is, you know, somewhere in the ballpark, right? They could be like relatives, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, this is not a jump scare movie. This is not like a bunch of, you know, cheap, like, I got you know. So that's pretty cool. I enjoyed those movies quite a lot. You know, these ones that kind of, they don't spell everything out for you. They make you think, you know, it's a movie. They show you things, and then you're supposed to be able to like put the pieces together just based on context clues, and just kind of based on like, okay, well, this character said this one thing, so what if they were actually trying to connect the dots way over here based on something we briefly saw. And it's also, you know, because of that, it's one of those movies where I feel like you might end up wanting to watch it a second or third time just to see if you like saw any background clues or little Easter eggs trying to earlier in the movie, maybe tying everything together a lot sooner than you realized. And I think there is some of that, you know. And even right now I'm sitting here thinking about it, and I'm like, well, there's some questions I still have as to like what the rules are and how this makes sense and what exactly was going on in this one scene. But there's a lot of other cool things just to leave you thinking about, right? Like you think about some of the interesting things they put center of screen really early on, and you're like, was that significant? Maybe. I don't know if that was intentional or not. So it is one of those. It's one of those where like you're gonna go back and rewatch it, and you're gonna notice things you didn't notice before, and you're gonna like pick up on a lot of maybe early hints as to what's actually going on. And yeah, overall, I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. It is, I don't know if you'd call it a slow burn, but it's definitely more of it's a creepy, spooky vibes movie for the most part, until we get, you know, towards the end when stuff starts becoming much more of a demonic creature feature kind of thing. And even then, when we're like, here's the, you know, the monster. I mean, it's on the poster, right? Like the creepy looking kid, right? Even when we're kind of there and like that thing is running around, that's not really the bad guy. I guess what I'm saying is, like, it's not like we're like running away from the monster is not what this movie becomes. You know, it's still very much the villain being, you know, in case you couldn't tell, the villain being this woman. It's still a much more interesting horror movie that way, where like, you know, it's really just about this lady who has lost something and she's trying to get it back. So we'll go into it in spoilers, but I do appreciate that even though there is a monster and there is like a, you know, a demon possession kind of thing going on, and, you know, normally I feel like a horror movie would kind of just evolve into run away from the thing, you know, and even Hereditary does do that, right? And that's scary on its own, but I do kind of appreciate the kind of different swing this one took, where it's like, okay, there is a monster, but like that's not, we're not just trying to run away from the monster, not really, you know, like it's about other things that are happening. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this one. It's not as like, you know, I'm not sitting here like feeling traumatized or something. Kind of like when the first time I saw Hereditary, when I was like sitting here thinking about it for like days, and just it was like seared into my brain. This one I appreciate a lot. There's a lot of interesting things about it. I don't know if it's going to be seared in my brain like that one was. So, you know, it's pretty good. It's a pretty great movie. A lot of interesting ideas, lots of things I'm gonna like be talking to people about who've seen the movie and try to speculate on, like, well, do you think this was connected to that thing over there? And I enjoy it when movies do that. They don't spell everything out for you. There's clearly clues there. There's clearly enough context to put all the pieces together, but they don't feel like they need to, like, you know, spoon feed it to you and clearly explain everything through dialogue. It's like, okay, there is information here. There are answers. We can figure this out, you know? So that's pretty cool. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into a little bit of spoilers, and I'll go over kind of, I guess, the basics of the plot. But I would recommend this one, especially if you do like, you know, your maybe Ari Aster films, or even, you know, just some of your, I don't know if people even still use the phrase elevated horror. I remember like that was a thing people were saying for a while, but you know, if you like your horror movies that are not just jump scare fest or slasher horror movies, like it's just more interesting and kind of artsy a little bit, I think you'll enjoy this one a lot. It's a pretty good movie. So spoilers, here we go. Spoilers. Okay, that's your warning. Spoiler warning. Okay, so this movie is ultimately about a mother who has lost her daughter, and she was involved in the foster care system, and they don't say how exactly, and this might be something we can piece together later, but somehow she has come across these VHS tapes where we see these rituals being done, and these people have figured out a process to bring someone back from the dead, right? Hence the title, Bring Her Back. And it involves finding, you know, she calls it an angel, but some kind of demonic presence that you let possess somebody. It doesn't seem to matter who this person is, just somebody, right? And then there's this whole ritual where you have to find a new body, a new person that you're going to put the soul of the dead person into. And that person has to die in the same way that the person you're bringing back died in, right? And then the demon possessed person is going to eat the body of the original person and then like baby bird feed it to the new person who just died, and that's like their soul, right? And that's essentially the goal here. That's essentially the premise of this. And something I do appreciate about the villain here, the woman who's trying to do this. Well, first, she's not some satanic cult member who's like just being genuinely evil for evil's sake, right? Like, she's clearly a mother who lost her daughter and went insane, right? Like she, like, the grief turned her insane to where she's willing to do horrible things to whoever she has to in order to get her daughter back. So, like, you know, that's much more interesting than just making her evil cult lady because evil, right? And I'm like, okay, very interesting villain here. Another thing is that she's not some mastermind to where like she's got this all planned out, she knows exactly what she's doing, she knows how everything works. Like, something goes wrong in the middle of this and she has to go back and watch the VHS tapes that are basically instructions on this whole process in order to figure out how to do certain things. And I actually appreciate that a lot because, you know, like I said, she's not some satanic cult leader who's really evil and an expert and all this evil demonic stuff. It's like, no, she was just a lady and she found out about this somehow and so she's like, yep, I'm gonna do that. Like, then this is the plan. So, there's a lot of, I guess, commentary on parenthood and, the relationship with children and abuse. That's something that the two main kids go through, and like that, they have to go through that whole story. And, there's a lot of commentary here I'm sure you could analyze the hell out of. So I will say there are some things that they do that they don't fully explain the rules on, and we're kind of left to guess to ourselves. One of them, which was so at a certain point they go to the funeral of their recently passed father, and their foster mom, this lady, the lady who's trying to do all this, she takes some of the hair off of the body of the father, and then she has the demon possessed kid eat the hair. And then later the son is like taking a shower, and he looks outside, and he sees his dad, and then he like passes out, right? Like he trips on something and he knocks himself out. But that didn't seem to be a ghost or like a vision or anything. It almost seemed as if the demon possessed kid was able to actually transform into the father, which is interesting. And they never, of course, like I said, they don't go into it, they don't explain it. And we don't even really see that happen again. But I guess we're just supposed to put two and two together. She took the hair, the kid ate it, became the dad, I guess. So there's a lot of interesting, like, soul stuff happening here, because she even says while they're at the father's funeral, she's like, some people say that the soul remains within the body for a couple months after they die, which, then explains the whole idea here with the demon having to eat the old body. It's because the soul is still in there. Okay, I guess I get that. And yeah, just overall, you're trying to piece together this movie as it's unfolding. You're trying to figure out, like, what is the plan, what's happening, what's, and at times it could get a little frustrating as I'm watching it, because I'm like, it seemed like random events at times, and some of it I'm still not even able to completely piece together, like what the motivation of certain acts was. For example, there was a point where the lady, she so she has the kids staying with her. She's the foster mom to these kids whose dad died, right? And one day the kid wakes up and he thinks that he's peed his pants, right? And so he's like embarrassed and he hides it and he goes to wash his clothes and all that. And then like the next night it's revealed that this lady peed into a little water jug and splashed it on the kid while he was sleeping to make him think that he was peeing his pants. And the only thing that ever comes of this is that she's able to kind of make him look unstable. I guess that way he won't be able to, try to adopt his own sister when he turns 18 in a couple months, because that was his plan, was like, he wants to take care of his sister, but he's not 18 yet, so he has to wait, and that's why they're in this foster home. So I guess that was the plan. Like that was her whole plan, to make him look more unstable, is to, like, she's literally gonna go pee in a water jug and then splash it on this kid. And I'm like, I don't know, like that wasn't part of like a ritual or anything. That was just, I guess it was just for that. I guess, I suppose so. But that just seemed kind of strange. We see there's white circles marking the ground, and that seems to be some kind of boundary for the demon, like it can't move past that. And that's all we really get, because we see like the kid moves outside of the white circle and he starts like blah, and then the demon eventually leaves him. So I guess, maybe that was just like a really convenient way to be like, we don't have to have a whole exorcism scene where we have to like get someone over here to try to get the demon out. No, you can just push him out the circle and the demon can't be outside the circle, I guess. So, I'm okay with it. That's an example of how they don't always explain things. And speaking of the circle, of like, the circle seems to be some process of controlling the demon, or at least calming the demon, because at one point it attacks her and it like takes a big old chunk out of her arm, and so she has to do like this circle thing on his head, and then later she does like a circle thing on the window, and that seems to just let her have some measure of control over this thing. Yeah, like I said, we're trying to piece this together as we go, because it's like I guess that's what that was. Anyways, so some other things. There is a couple of sequences with this demon kid where like all the body horror, all of the all of the just like grotesque imagery, like that's where it's all coming from. It's coming from this kid, because I guess the idea is that he's meant to eat the soul and then transfer it. So he's sitting here for days hungry to eat something, and so there's a kitchen scene. I don't want to ruin it, but let's just say, like, if there's going to be a highlight from this movie, if there's going to be like a moment where a lot of people in the horror community are going to point to and be like, oh, this is the crazy thing that happened in this movie, it's going to be the kitchen scene. Now having said that, I don't want to hype it up too much. It's not like the craziest thing I've ever seen in a horror movie. I've seen a lot of horror movies, but it was still like pretty like, okay, that was that was pretty intense. That was a crazy thing that happened. So anyways, there is that. And just overall, whoever this kid is that they got to play this character, like, he's the one that's being put through all the prosthetics and all the crazy transformation makeup, because by the end of it, he's like, he's like full on demon, like just head all deformed and eyes are like red and orange, and it gets real nasty looking. And surprisingly enough, one of our leads does not make it, but our villain makes it. I didn't expect that. She seemingly just gets arrested by the police, and I almost want to see what happens after this, because like I said, she was just a normal lady, but then I think by the end of the movie, she's killed at least 2 or 3 people. So I don't know. I would almost watch like a whole court hearing, like what do you do with this lady? Like, how do you explain half of this stuff? Something else I think was kind of interesting, and maybe I misheard this in the movie, but I don't think I did, but here we go. So this is right after the kid has seen his own father in the shower. His dead father, who's, I think was the shape-shifting demon, I guess. I don't know. So he falls and hits his head, and he goes to the hospital, and the foster mom visits him in the hospital and talking, and she puts on this act. And by the way, this lady is so good at putting on that friendly act, being like, oh, I'm the cool foster mom. We're gonna dance, we're gonna drink, we're gonna have like these fun times. But then she, like, especially when she's talking to the boy here, she lets it slip. She lets it slip so like casually to like a lot of passive aggressive stuff she says to him and about him, and she's like trying to ruin his reputation the whole movie. And anyways, one of those scenes where she's like trying to get in his head, I guess, she says something like, she's like, oh yeah, your father, he died, he fell in the shower, I killed him. And then he's like, wait, what? And she's like, oh yeah, he died, he fell in the shower. And like, you're like, did he actually hear that because he hit his head, or did she actually say that, or is she messing with him? Because that's another thing that's never brought back up in the movie. Like, the movie never tells us that she killed their father, because it does feel unlikely. Like, I don't know how she would have accomplished that, because he kind of just fell in the shower. But it does make me question things. I'm like, wait, are there clues that point to this? And again, maybe I misheard it in the theater, maybe she didn't actually say that, but I swear she did. Like, it happens really quick to where like the boy almost doesn't even catch it, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Anyways, yeah, this movie was very interesting. There's a lot of ways you can analyze this thing, a lot of the different themes about family and parents and You know, what would you do to bring back a loved one? You'd probably do something horrible, I guess, right? You know, which kind of similar themes to Talk to Me, right? Like, kind of, we're playing with some similar ideas. And yeah, I think a lot of the horror elements really work. A lot of the body horror, a lot of the just grotesque stuff overall. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. And it does make you think. And I think that's like the key to a great horror movie, is that like when you sit down later, you're still thinking about it. Maybe you're thinking about the rules. Maybe you're thinking about like any clues you missed. But it sticks with you. You didn't like forget it. Like I'm sitting here trying to replay the movie in my brain, you know. Anyways, I really enjoyed this one. I had a great time. It's definitely worth watching. If you like Talk to Me, if you like any of those like Ari Aster type films, I feel like this is in that ballpark of kind of like, oh, it might be a little slow for some people. It might not give enough answers for some people. But I feel like if you pay attention, if you try to pick up on as many clues as you can, you know, you'll find a lot of enjoyment in this one. I recommend you go watch it. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.